Last month, I was driving through Arizona on my way to visit family. It was getting late, almost midnight, and I could barely keep my eyes open. I decided to stop at the next motel I saw, which ended up being this place called Desert Pines Motel just off the highway. The parking lot was nearly empty, just 3 cars total. The neon sign was flickering, half the letters burnt out. When I walked into the office, an older man with deep wrinkles and sunken eyes was sitting behind the counter watching an old TV. He didn't look up when I entered. I asked for a room and placed my credit card on the counter. The man finally glanced up, his eyes bloodshot, and stated that it would be $70 cash only, no cards accepted. Luckily, I had enough cash. He handed me an actual metal key attached to a plastic tag with 112 written in faded marker. No electronic key cards here. The room was at the far end of the building. I had to jiggle the key pretty hard to get the door open. Inside, the room smelled musty, like it hadn't been aired out in months. There was a queen bed with a faded floral bedspread, an old TV, and a bathroom with yellowing tiles. Nothing fancy, but I just needed sleep. I dropped my overnight bag, took a quick shower, and collapsed onto the bed. The springs creaked loudly beneath me. I tried turning on the TV, but it just showed static on every channel. I gave up and turned off the lights. Just as I was drifting off to sleep, I heard a loud thump against my window. I bolted upright, heart racing. Through the thin curtains, I could see a silhouette of someone standing outside, looking in. The figure tapped on the glass again. I heard a muffled voice claiming to need help, saying he was hurt. Something felt wrong about the situation. I suggested they go to the front office instead. The voice became more insistent, claiming to be bleeding and needing to use a phone. I wasn't about to open the door to a stranger at 1 a.m. I reached for the room phone to call the office, but the line was dead. The tapping continued, becoming more aggressive. The voice outside grew demanding, stating that they knew I was alone. The tapping turned to pounding, the whole window shaking. I could hear someone trying the door handle now, rattling it hard. I grabbed my cell phone to call 911, but there was no signal. Each second felt like an eternity as the doorknob rattled more violently. I backed away, looking frantically around the room for anything I could use as a weapon. There was nothing but a cheap lamp and a plastic ice bucket. The pounding on the door suddenly stopped, and for a moment I thought maybe they'd given up. Then I heard a new sound, scratching, slow and deliberate, moving from the door to the window. It sounded like metal against glass. I could see the curtain moving slightly as something pushed against it from outside. The scratching continued around the entire perimeter of the window, as if someone was testing for weaknesses. My mouth went dry, and I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Suddenly, the window shattered. Glass exploded inward, and I saw a hand reaching through the broken pane, feeling for the lock. I didn't wait to see more. I backed into the bathroom and locked the door, searching for a window to escape through. There was a small one above the shower. I climbed onto the toilet and pushed it open, squeezing my body through. I ran straight to my car, not looking back. As I fumbled with my keys, I glanced toward my room. The door was wide open now, but no one was visible inside or around it. I drove to the nearest police station and reported what happened. When officers went to investigate, they found the motel office empty. My room door was locked, and everything inside was untouched. According to their records, Desert Pines Motel had been officially closed for 6 months due to health code violations, but I still have the key with 1112 on the tag, and sometimes, late at night, I still hear tapping on my bedroom window. Two summers ago, I was on a road trip through the Pacific Northwest. I had been driving for nearly 15 hours straight and was completely exhausted when I reached a small coastal town in Oregon. It was almost 1 a.m., raining heavily, and I needed a place to crash for the night. I spotted a sign for Harborview Motel and followed the arrows down a winding road. The motel sat on a cliff overlooking the ocean, an old 2-story building with peeling blue paint. The parking lot was empty except for an old pickup truck, probably belonging to whoever worked there. The lobby was small and dimly lit. An elderly woman sat behind the counter, filling out a crossword puzzle. She barely acknowledged me when I walked in, just slid a registration card across the counter without looking up. I filled it out and handed it back along with my credit card. She processed the payment and gave me a key to room 203, second floor, at the very end of the building. The stairs creaked as I climbed them, my suitcase bumping against each step. The outdoor walkway was slick with rain, and the wind coming off the ocean was freezing. Room 203 was the last one, situated right at the edge of the cliff. From the doorway, I could see nothing but darkness beyond the railings, but I could hear the waves crashing against the rocks below. The room was basic but clean. A double bed, small TV, bathroom, and a window facing the ocean. I was too tired to care about amenities. After a quick shower, I collapsed onto the bed and fell asleep almost instantly. I woke suddenly, disoriented. The digital clock on the nightstand read 3:17 a.m. The room was freezing cold, and I could hear the storm outside had intensified. Rain lashed against the window, and the wind howled around the building. But something else had woken me, a sound from the bathroom. Water was running in the sink. I was certain I had turned everything off before going to bed. I lay there listening, too tired to get up immediately. After about a minute, the water stopped. Then I heard what sounded like wet footsteps moving across the bathroom tile. I sat up slowly, eyes fixed on the bathroom door, which was partially open. No light was on inside, just darkness. The footsteps stopped. Then, to my horror, I saw water slowly seeping out from under the bathroom door, spreading across the carpet toward the bed. My body went rigid with fear. The water kept coming, more than should be possible from just a sink or bathtub overflow. As it reached the foot of the bed, I noticed it wasn't clear. It was darkish, with what looked like bits of seaweed mixed in. It smelled like the ocean. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand to call for help, but there was no signal. The motel phone was dead too. The water continued rising, now several inches deep throughout the entire room. I jumped up onto the bed, watching in disbelief as items from my suitcase began floating. That's when I noticed something in the bathroom doorway, a dark shape, lower to the ground, moving slowly. At first I thought it was just shadows, but then I realized it was a hand, a human hand, crawling out from the bathroom, fingers splayed against the wet carpet. It was followed by another hand, then arms, dragging a body behind them. In the darkness I couldn't see clearly, but it appeared to be a woman, her hair long and tangled with seaweed, her clothes soaked and torn. She moved unnaturally, dragging herself across the floor through the rising water, heading straight for my bed. I scrambled off the other side of the bed and made for the door, splashing through the ankle-deep water. My fingers fumbled with the lock, finally getting it open. I burst outside into the pouring rain, not even stopping to grab my belongings. The entire walkway was flooded with several inches of water. As I ran toward the stairs, I glanced back at my room. The door was still open, water pouring out, but there was no sign of the crawling figure. I made it to the lobby, soaking wet and panicking. The front desk was empty, no sign of the elderly woman. I rang the bell repeatedly, but no one came. The entire building seemed deserted now. I ran outside to my car, started the engine, and drove straight to the nearest gas station that was open. The attendant there called the police after seeing my condition. When officers went to investigate the Harborview Motel, they found the building completely dry, no flooding, no water damage. The elderly woman at the desk claimed no guest had checked into room 203 that night. According to her, that room had been closed off for renovations ever since a woman had committed suicide there a year ago, jumping from the balcony into the ocean during a storm. I drove straight through the rest of the night, not stopping until I was 2 states away. Sometimes when it rains heavily, I still wake up at exactly 3:17 a.m., and my floors feel damp to the touch, though they're completely dry when I turn on the lights. Last winter, I was traveling back from a business conference when a severe snowstorm forced me to stop for the night. I was on a remote stretch of highway in Colorado, and visibility had dropped to almost zero. My GPS showed a small town about 5 miles ahead, so I slowly made my way there, desperate to find shelter before the roads became completely impassable. The town was tiny, just a handful of buildings clustered around the main street. Most places were closed due to the storm, but I spotted a neon vacancy sign glowing through the blizzard at a place called Mountain Pass Lodge. It looked more like an old house than a motel, a 2-story Victorian building with a steep roof now covered in snow. I parked in the small lot and trudged through knee-deep snow to the front door. Inside, it was warm and surprisingly elegant. The lobby had antique furniture, a stone fireplace with a crackling fire, and dark wood paneling. An older gentleman stood behind the reception desk, impeccably dressed in what looked like an outdated suit. He smiled as I entered, seemingly unsurprised to see a guest despite the terrible weather. The check-in process was old-fashioned. No computers, just a leather-bound guest book that I signed. The man informed me that due to the storm, I was the only guest that night. He gave me a brass key to room 7, upstairs at the end of the hall, and mentioned that there would be no breakfast service due to the weather preventing staff from arriving. My room was unexpectedly luxurious for such a small-town establishment. A 4-poster bed with a thick quilt, antique furniture, and a small fireplace that had already been lit. The window looked out onto the back of the property, where I could just make out the shapes of pine trees bending under the weight of snow. The bathroom was also surprisingly modern, with a large clawfoot tub. Exhausted from the stressful drive, I took a hot bath, changed into pajamas, and went straight to bed. The last thing I remember was listening to the howling wind outside and feeling grateful for finding such comfortable shelter. I woke suddenly, unsure what had disturbed me. The room was freezing cold, the fire had died out, but that didn't explain why the temperature had dropped so drastically. My breath came out in visible puffs. The digital clock on my phone showed 3:03 a.m. Then I heard it, footsteps in the hallway outside, slow and deliberate. They paused right outside my door. The brass doorknob turned slowly, but thankfully I had locked it before going to bed. After a moment, the footsteps continued down the hall. I tried to convince myself it was just the owner checking on things, but something felt wrong. I lay perfectly still, listening. 10 minutes later, the footsteps returned, passing my door again, and continuing until I couldn't hear them anymore. I was about to try going back to sleep when I noticed something strange, a shadow moving across the wall. It wasn't cast by anything in the room, yet it moved like a person walking back and forth. I sat up, watching in disbelief as the shadow grew larger, stretching across the wall until it formed the distinct silhouette of a man in old-fashioned clothing. The shadow stopped moving, appearing to stare directly at me despite having no face. Then, slowly, it raised one arm and pointed toward the bathroom door, which was closed. My heart pounding, I remained frozen in bed. A soft thumping sound began coming from inside the bathroom, rhythmic, like something being dropped repeatedly on the floor. The shadow continued pointing, becoming more agitated, its arm moving up and down insistently, fighting against every instinct telling me to run. I found myself getting out of bed. I approached the bathroom door, my hand shaking as I reached for the handle. The thumping grew louder. I pushed the door open. The bathroom was transformed. The modern fixtures were gone, replaced by an old-fashioned basin and a metal tub. The walls were different too, covered in dark stains that looked horribly like dried blood. In the tub lay a body, a man in clothing from perhaps the 1920s, his throat cut, eyes staring lifelessly at the ceiling. The thumping sound was coming from a small object falling from his limp hand and hitting the floor, a pocket watch opening and closing with each drop. I screamed and stumbled backward, slamming the bathroom door shut. When I turned around, the shadow on the wall was gone. I grabbed my phone to call for help, but there was no signal. The room phone was dead too. I threw on my clothes, grabbed my car keys, and ran for the door. The hallway outside was pitch black and freezing cold. Using my phone's flashlight, I made my way downstairs to the lobby. The lobby was completely different, dusty, abandoned, with furniture covered in sheets. The fireplace was cold, filled with ashes that looked years old. It was clear no one had been here in a very long time. I ran outside to my car, my feet breaking through a fresh layer of snow. As I pulled away, I looked back at Mountain Pass Lodge. In the faint moonlight now breaking through the storm clouds, I could see that the building was partially collapsed, with boarded-up windows and a caved-in roof. When the storm cleared the next day, I spoke to local police. They told me Mountain Pass Lodge had been abandoned since 1932, after the owner murdered a guest in room 7 and then killed himself. The guest had been having an affair with the owner's wife. Apparently, every few years, travelers caught in storms report finding the lodge mysteriously open and operational, only to discover its true condition in the morning. The pocket watch found at the original crime scene was never recovered. Sometimes I still hear that thumping sound in my dreams, a pocket watch opening and closing, over and over, as if keeping time for something waiting to happen again.